world is increasingly becoming divided into red and blue. It is now at a crossroads. It's important for us now to have a new mindset, one that takes our values and twists it and blends it into something stronger than what we've ever had before. I call that the purple mark. The purple mark is not about losing your individuality. It's about creating unity. Despite our differences, we need to come together. Now you may ask, why did I pick the color purple? I was in the Marine Corps for 22 years, and during that time, I served in many billets. And some billets that I served in were called joint billets. And that's when all the branches of the service together are brought to one location to work together. You see, the armed services all have their own color for each branch. The Army with their green, the Navy with their blue and white, the Air Force with their blue, and the Marine Corps with their scarlet and gold. And we are taught at the time we go to boot camp that our service colors are the best, to the point where there's bar fights that take place across the country supporting those colors. But when you're on a joint billet, you're taught you have to give up your service color because there's only one color that you have that you are utilizing during that time. And that color is based off of our national flag. See, when you take the colors of red, white, and blue and put them together, you get the color purple. And that's the only color that we as a unit are working for, is our nation as one. Let me introduce you to one of the great Americans that understood and stood in his purple. That was General Colin Powell. General Colin Powell came from humble beginnings. He came from immigrant Jamaican parents. He was raised in the Bronx of New York and rose to the highest level of the military, understanding that he was the example for all to see in the service. He had to carry himself in a different way. Not only did he do so, but he did so in fine fashion. He understood that he was the leader of everyone in the armed service. Male or female, Army, Navy, it didn't make a difference. He was in charge of all of them. And he stood in his purple and made sure that he carried himself in a way that we all could be proud of. Let me share with you my story of how I originally got into purple, or really was introduced to it. I was a sophomore in high school. And let's just say that the leadership of the current high school I was going to and myself did not get along. So back in those days, there wasn't all these different high schools you could go to. There was one public school, and if you didn't go to that public school, you then had to go to a private school. My parents chose, for me to go to a Catholic school. And the reason being is they felt I needed some discipline. When I told my friends that I was going to a Catholic school, they said, oh man, you gotta watch out for those Catholics, man. You can't go in there showing any kind of weakness. They're strong. They drink real wine during communion. My first day I went in, I met the principal, Sister Adele. Sister Adele was up in age, very nice lady. I sat down. She goes through all the rules, no fighting, no foul language, so forth and so on. Then she looks at me and she says, do you understand? Leaning back on what my friends had said, not showing any weakness, I said, oh no. Without hesitation, she went straight back into all the rules again. By this time, I'm thinking, okay, I got this old lady. So I leaned back And I say, I don't know, when she asked me again. Just as I uttered that last syllable, I noticed on her desk a cane. And she was at the neck of the cane unscrewing it. And she pulled out a knife about this long. She sat it in front of me and she said, now do you understand? At this moment, now I start to think about how friends can get you in trouble. But my mother didn't raise a fool. And I knew right then that I needed to act right. And so I said, yes, ma'am, I understand. She went through a lot more rules, but what she ended with was, I'm going to check on you every day. And every day she did. She checked on me to make sure that I was okay. She went along to the point where she was out of town and still reached back to check on me. Sister Adele and I became very close. So close that during graduation, friends and family said that her and I were never going to let go of each other during the embrace as I walked across the stage to get my diploma. Later on that day, her and I found ourselves over at the Punch Bowl. She starts to talk to me a little bit what's going on for the summer, and I start telling her what my plans were. In doing so, then she looks at me and she says, do you remember when we first met? I said, yes, ma'am. She says, do you remember my office? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, do you remember the cane? And I said, the one with the big knife? She said, yeah, that one. I said, yes, ma'am, I do. She said, I just want to let you know, that was not my cane. I had just confiscated that from a student, and I thought it was a perfect time to use it. Sister Adele stood in her purple. She had all the authority over top of me, but she did not dominate me. She reached out and carried me along in my youth. She invited me to walk with her in her purple. She stood in her purple regardless of my race, my background. She understood the importance of unity. That is the same thing that we need now in this country, is unity. We need to all stand in our purple. Now, the colors of red, white, and blue are not unique to the United States flag. You'll be interested to know that 30 other nations also incorporate red, white, and blue to their flag. So this is not just a United States thing. This is an international thing where people need to come together and stand in their purple. Be the ones that make the difference. So if you're having an argument with a neighbor, back up, stand in your purple, see what they have to say. If you and your spouse are having difficulties, back up, stand in your purple, see what she has to say. No one's always right and no one's always wrong. It's not important on being right, it's important on getting it right. That's what we need to do. So I say to you today, whether you saint or sinner, whether we black or white, whether we rich or poor, regardless of where we come from, it's important for all of us to stand in our purple and bring others and unite. So I say to you, the next time that you stand in your purple. Thank you.